Congresswoman Omar, you have constructed an entire career upon the premise of serving as the vocal advocate for the unheard, standing up for struggling families, championing forgotten communities, and defending the victims of systemic corruption. Vice President Vance's voice projected across the hearing room, measured and disciplined, possessing that distinct quality of a Marine prosecutor that often induced nervousness in the guilty, leading to a single, straightforward question. When exactly did you decide to embody everything you claim to oppose? The congressional hearing room on this Tuesday morning saw every seat occupied, with C-SPAN cameras rolling live, capturing the kind of high-stakes hearing that either defines careers or terminates them. Vice President Vance was presiding, utilizing his authority as Senate President in a rare, historic, and unprecedented move, while Ilhan Omar sat at the witness table, already shifting uncomfortably in her chair, aware of what was approaching. Indeed, everyone present knew what was on the horizon. We are gathered here because there are serious inquiries, profound questions regarding finances, concerning connections, and regarding a billion-dollar fraud scheme that occurred within your district, within your fundraising territory, and among your donors and campaign workers. There are questions about how refugee programs were allegedly transformed into personal piggy banks, where lunch money intended for hungry children ended up purchasing someone's third vacation home. Before you begin your defense, and I am certain you will, let us establish that this is not about your faith, it is not about your identity, and it is not about your place of birth. Rather, it is about documents, bank records, and federal indictments involving 70 individuals, all connected to the same fraud, with several linked to your campaign. Let us commence with the basics, specifically the Feeding Our Future scandal, where $1 billion was stolen from American taxpayers, stolen from programs designed to feed children, and somehow, Congresswoman, a significant number of the people being arrested appear to be individuals you know quite well. Would you care to explain that? Omar launched into her prepared statement, targeting Islamophobia and citing unfair scrutiny of Muslim politicians, utilizing the familiar playbook and the same deflections, her voice rising with a practiced sense of indignation, while Vance merely watched, taking notes for 30 seconds, then a minute, then 2 minutes. She was building momentum, gaining confidence, and warming to her narrative of victimhood, the champagne socialist in her element, until he held up a single sheet of paper, and she stopped mid-sentence, effectively silenced. He did not wait for an answer, stating it was good. She paused, because he had 70 names right there. 70 people indicted in the Feeding Our Future fraud, representing federal indictments and not merely allegations, and he needed her to help him understand something curious. He placed the paper down flat on the table, a deliberate motion where the sound echoed, noting that 7 of these individuals donated to her campaign, and not just $1, nor $5, but thousands, representing real money. One of them, he tapped the paper, was Guhad Hashi Syed, whom multiple witnesses described as her campaign enforcer, the man who ensured people donated, ensured they voted correctly, and ensured things went her way within the Somali community. Omar's hands clasped together, showing the first sign of tension, as Vance noted that Mr. Syed is now indicted for stealing millions from programs meant to feed hungry children during a pandemic, adding sarcastically that he was sure it was just a coincidence. Vance's tone suggested he found absolutely nothing coincidental about the matter, proposing a discussion on coincidences and highlighting what was interesting about the money flow. Federal dollars flowed into the Minnesota Feeding Our Future program, a noble cause to feed kids during a pandemic, except the children were not getting fed. The money was not feeding children, it was feeding something else entirely. Picture this: a small business owner in Minneapolis working 2 jobs, filling out forms, paying taxes every year, sees a local charity offering to feed kids during the pandemic, thinks it is a good cause, and donates $50 he cannot really spare, feeling good about helping. Meanwhile, across town at the Safari restaurant, a nice place and a Somali community hub, which according to multiple witnesses is the Congresswoman's spot where she holds fundraisers, where her team meets, and where the community knows to go if they want access to her. It happens to be the same restaurant where the Feeding Our Future fraud was coordinated. It was the same place, the same people. Some nights, it hosted a fundraiser for the congresswoman, and other nights, it hosted planning sessions for defrauding the federal government. One location with two purposes. Funny how that works. Let me ensure I understand this correctly. Federal money flows to Feeding Our Future in the millions, tens of millions, eventually over $1 billion. And the program claims to feed hungry kids, but the kids aren't getting fed. Instead, the money is disappearing into luxury cars, mansions, jewelry, international travel, and campaign donations. Here is what is interesting, though, Vance noted as he pulled out another document. The timing regarding her fundraisers at Safari Land and the donations from individuals now indicted shows the fraud ramping up simultaneously. It all happens together, in the same time frame, at the same location, with the same people. Omar leaned forward, insisting she had no knowledge of any fraudulent activity. But Vance interrupted surgically, asking if she thought she cared about the little guy, the working families in her district, because these fraudsters were stealing from working families, from taxpayers, and from hungry children while donating to her campaign, attending her events, and using her fundraising venue as their fraud headquarters. Her voice climbed in pitch, defensive, stating she returned those donations when she learned of the situation, to which Vance leaned back and corrected that she returned the money after the FBI raids, after the arrests, and after the headlines, not before, never before, when it could have mattered, when those kids could have been fed, or when that $1 billion could have done actual good. Just a simple question. Did Guhad Hashi Sayed work for your campaign? Omar hesitated, a fatal tell, claiming he was a volunteer community organizer, but Vance pressed, did he or did he not help raise money for your campaigns? Yes or no? Did the Somali community support him? Yes or no? Each word was separated, sharp and clear, and the silence stretched for 5 seconds, then 10, until someone in the gallery coughed, and she whispered a barely audible, yes. Thank you. Vance nodded slowly, acknowledging that a man whom the FBI says stole millions from children's feeding programs also raised thousands for her campaigns. A man whom multiple witnesses call her enforcer. A man who operated out of her fundraising venue, and yet she wants everyone to believe she did not know, did not ask questions, did not wonder where all this sudden money was coming from, and did not notice her fundraising hub was also a central point for fraud. Omar was breathing faster now, audible in the microphone, as Vance remarked refugee to riches, noting it was funny how that works, his voice dropping quieter and more dangerous. You come to America with nothing, champion the poor, fight for the forgotten, and somehow end up surrounded by people stealing from the poorest kids in your district, people who also happen to be filling your campaign coffers. Her face went pale, her mouth opening with no words coming out. But Vance continued, stating there was more, as he pulled out a thick folder, noting that after the arrests started and the headlines hit, she made a statement claiming she was one of the first members of Congress to call for investigations into Feeding Our Future. He opened the folder to reveal her letter to the Secretary of Agriculture, asking if anyone wanted to know when it was dated. It was 3 months after the FBI raids began, 3 months after 70 people were already under investigation, and after the fraud was already national news. That is not being first. That is called covering your tracks. And gasps rippled through the room as someone in the press gallery whispered urgently into a phone. Omar tried again, her voice shaking now, claiming she was deceived just like everyone else. But Vance cut through cleanly and finally, stating no, she was not deceived. She benefited, her campaign benefited, and her political operation benefited while kids went hungry, while taxpayers got robbed, and while families struggled, her campaign account grew. That is not being deceived. That is being complicit. And he leaned forward, making direct eye contact, to ask directly under oath, did she or did she not receive campaign donations from individuals now indicted for stealing from programs meant to feed children? The longest pause yet ensued. 15 seconds, then 20, where you could hear her breathing through the microphone, fast and shallow with panic, until she finally whispered, "Yes." She said, "Yes." Folks watching at home, she just admitted it under oath. The room heard it. The cameras caught it. That is a confession of connection, and we are just getting started. The room erupted with reporters typing frantically, Republicans in the chamber nodding, Democrats studying their shoes, and progressive allies in the gallery suddenly becoming very interested in their phones. 3 staffers stood up, gathered their briefcases, and walked out. Just left. The clicking of the door echoing once, twice, 3 times, each exit a betrayal she could not ignore. That afternoon, ethics complaints were filed by 5 congressional offices. Separate complaints all asking the same question. What did she know, and when did she know it? The FEC opened a preliminary inquiry. The Minnesota Attorney General's office issued a statement reviewing the matter. The translation being, she is in trouble. Her district office phones were ringing off the hook with constituents demanding answers. Campaign donors were texting each other, asking, "Did we fund this?" And small business owners in Minneapolis watching on TV finally saw someone say what they had been thinking. Where did all that money go? By evening, 3 major donors publicly distanced themselves, not quietly, but publicly, with press releases supporting full transparency in this matter. The translation being, she is on her own. Local Somali leaders issued careful statements, supporting thorough investigations of any wrongdoing, not defending her, but just supporting investigations, with the community reading between the lines. That is round 1. Vance gathered his papers into a neat stack. Precise. 7 donors, 1 enforcer, $1 billion, and somehow, she knew nothing. Share this comment. What did she know? And when did she know it? Because round 2 is about how she spent the money that did make it to her campaign, specifically who she spent it on. And trust me, you will want to hear this. We will be right back. Let's talk about love. Vance's tone shifted to almost conversational. The calm before the storm. Love is a beautiful thing. Unexpected, spontaneous, romantic. Omar shifted in her seat. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something urgent, and she nodded, trying to prepare for whatever was coming. Or in your case, Congresswoman, incredibly well-funded. He pulled out a new folder thicker than the last, noting she met Tim Minette when she hired his consulting firm, the E Street Group, in 2018 for a professional relationship, business standard stuff. He opened the folder slowly, building anticipation, noting that somewhere along the way, and he was just reading from her own interviews here, she fell in love. It happens to people, chemistry, connection. Hearts don't follow schedules. He looked up with direct eye contact, stating that, except here is what is interesting. Between falling in love and marrying him, her campaign paid his firm $2.78 million. Let that number sink in. Million with an M. 2.78 of them. Omar's hands were gripping the table edge now, knuckles whitening, as Vance continued, saying he is just a guy from Ohio with a Marine background. Pretty traditional values, a simple man, but his folksy delivery made the knife twist sharper, where he comes from. When you start dating someone, usually the courting involves flowers, maybe dinner and a movie, but she went with millions in campaign funds, romantic, expensive, and according to her lawyers, completely legal. He paused to examine that claim, noting that here is what is interesting. The Minnesota Campaign Finance Board looked into this. State officials, not partisan hacks, but just bureaucrats doing their jobs. And you know what they found? Violations, plural, not allegations, but findings, official findings. The board ruled that her campaign improperly used funds. They ordered her to reimburse $3,500, and they fined her a $500 civil penalty for violating state campaign finance law. But that is just the state level. Small potatoes, right? Vance's sarcasm was surgical as he pivoted to talk about the real money. Federal campaign funds under FEC jurisdiction. Let me make sure I understand this timeline. Month 1, you hire E Street Group, Tim Minette's firm, for $60,000 for consulting. A reasonable rate, standard stuff. Month 3, payments increase. Month 6, payments double. Nothing unusual happening in your life. Right. Just business. Month 8, Tim Minette tells his wife he is leaving her for you, for the congresswoman, according to divorce filings and his wife's sworn testimony, stating he told her he was romantically involved with Representative Omar. But I thought you cared about the little guy. Vance's recurring hook landed hard, referring to the small donor in Minneapolis who scraped together $25 for her campaign, the college kid who donated $10 instead of lunch, the working mom who gave $50 from her grocery money because they believed in her, believed she would fight corruption. He pulled out a printout of a campaign finance report, noting that the $25, that $10, that $50, part of it went to her boyfriend for consulting that included, according to court documents, travel expenses. Travel where? With whom? Doing what? Exactly? Omar's voice rose defensively, claiming the FEC cleared her. But Vance shouted, "Stop," and held up a hand, clarifying that the FEC didn't clear her. The FEC was deadlocked, 4 commissioners were needed for action, and they only had 3. That is not exoneration. That is an inability to prosecute. A big difference. Here is the real story, the human story. Picture the small donor who works 2 jobs, sees you on TV fighting for the people, fighting corruption, fighting the system, thinks finally someone who gets it, donates $25 they can't really afford, does it anyway. Because belief matters? Because hope matters? That $25 gets pooled with thousands of others, goes into your campaign account, and where does it go from there? To Tim Minette's firm for consulting, for travel, for digital advertising that any intern could do, for fundraising that actually decreased during this period. $2.78 million for what? Generic mail pieces? Basic Facebook ads? Standard political work? The kind every campaign does? The kind that normally costs maybe $200,000, maybe $300 if you are fancy, but you paid $2.78 million to your boyfriend, then husband, for work worth a fraction of that. Just a simple question. How much did you pay E Street before you started dating Mr. Minette? I don't recall the exact amount. $60,000. I'll help you remember. $60,000 for professional services. How much after you started dating him? Our relationship had nothing to do with the campaign. $2.78 million. That is quite a raise. That is a 4,000% increase for falling in love. Did your campaign contributors know their money was funding your romance? Silence lingered longer than before. Heavier. The kind of silence that answers questions without words. Her breathing audible through the microphone, fast and shallow. No answer? Of course not. Vance's voice softened, becoming more dangerous in its quietness. Because you know what that sounds like? What it looks like? What it is? It represents using donor money for personal benefit. It involves converting campaign funds for private use. It is exactly what the law prohibits. He pulled out another document, noting the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board found she violated reporting requirements, found she used campaign funds for purposes not permitted by statute, found her guilty, an official finding, not an opinion. Omar tried to speak, her voice cracking, saying she has apologized for any errors, but Vance retorted that she apologized for getting caught, stating, "There is a difference." She said she would close her old state account and distribute funds to train new candidates, noble words. But she kept the federal money flowing, kept paying her husband's firm, and only stopped when the press made it impossible to continue. That is not accountability. That is damage control. Refugee to riches. Funny how that works. You came to America with nothing, built a political career on fighting corruption and holding the powerful accountable, and the moment you got power, you used it to enrich your husband with donor money. The moment you got access to campaign accounts, you turned them into a personal piggy bank. Omar's head was down now, shoulders hunched, body language screaming defeat. The champagne socialist. Vance's voice carried across the silent room. That is what they call people like you? Preach equality, practice luxury, attack the rich, become the rich. Tell working families to sacrifice while you sacrifice nothing. The room exploded again. Campaign finance reform groups issuing statements calling it a deeply troubling pattern, raising serious questions about oversight. Translation: she is dirty. 5 more staffers walking out that day, her chief of staff taking sudden leave, communications director pursuing other opportunities, press secretary spending time with family, the rats leaving the sinking ship, each departure, another betrayal, another crack in the foundation. The Minnesota Democratic Farmer-Labor Party issued a statement, carefully worded, saying they expect all their candidates to follow campaign finance laws to the letter. Translation: she is not our problem, don't tie her to us. Small donors across the country logging into Act Blue, seeing their contributions of $5, $10, $25, realizing where it went, the comments section becoming brutal with sentiments like, "I donated to fight corruption, not fund her wedding registry. This is exactly what I voted against," and refund demanded. The National Republican Congressional Committee cut an ad within hours. Her face and Minette's face, with giant red letters reading to 78 million on donors, 8 million voiceover, saying, "Your donations, her husband, your fight against corruption, her corruption, running in every swing district by nightfall." That is round 2. Vance stacking papers again with that same precise motion, 2.78 million reasons to question her integrity. But wait, there is more, because while she was paying her husband millions, he was busy with side projects using other people's money. And it gets worse, much worse. Round 3 reveals where investor money went and why families who trusted him ended up with nothing. Stay tuned. Now, while your campaign was making Tim Minette very wealthy, Vance pulled out a new folder, even thicker, noting he was busy with entrepreneurship, the American dream, starting businesses and taking risks. Omar looked up wary, sensing where this was going. He and his business partner Will Haler started some ventures. A winery in Rhode Island called Est Cru, a fancy name, French-sounding, very sophisticated, and also started a marijuana business in South Dakota. Cannabis ventures, very on trend, very progressive. Vance's tone dripped with irony. Ambitious projects required investment, and investors stepped up, believed in the vision, believed in the businessmen from Washington, D.C. with connections and expertise, and put their money in. He opened the folder, stating, "Except there is a problem. Well, several problems. Multiple lawsuits, fraud allegations, missing money, and investors who put in their life savings somehow ended up with nothing. Let that sink in. But I am sure you knew nothing about that either. Here is what is interesting. Court documents from the discovery phase of the lawsuits, financial records subpoenaed, business accounts examined. Want to know what investigators found? One account had 5 cents. Vance let the number hang. Not 5,000, not 500, but 5 cents. Another account had $42.44. This is from businesses that took in millions from investors. Omar's hands were shaking slightly now, a visible tremor. Now I am just a Marine with basic math skills, but when millions go in and pennies come out, something is wrong with that equation. Either catastrophically terrible business skills, which raises the question of why your campaign paid him millions to consult on your political business, or fraud, which raises different questions. Let me make sure I understand this. Your husband took money from investors, working families in Rhode Island, small business owners, people who had saved for years, 20,000, Sanwen, Siwen, life savings for some of them. They invested in his winery, believed in local business, believed in the American dream, and what happened to their money? Gone. Vanished. Lawsuits filed. Court dates scheduled. Discovery revealing empty accounts. Attorneys telling shocked investors, "Sorry, the money is gone. Nothing to recover. But I thought you cared about the little guy." The hook landing again harder each time, about working families, about people trying to build something, because your husband's fraud victims are working families. They are people who believed in something, who took a risk, who lost everything. Picture them. Real people, not statistics. A couple in Rhode Island saved for 10 years, $40,000. Wanted to invest in local business, support their community, trusted two businessmen from D.C. Professional men, connected men. One of them, married to a congresswoman, for God's sake, seemed legitimate. They signed the papers, transferred the money, waited for returns, got lawsuits instead, got court dates, got discovery showing empty bank accounts, got nothing. Here is the timeline again, because timing matters. Your husband starts these ventures while consulting for your campaign. Takes millions from investors, takes millions from your campaign. Both ventures failing, both investors suing, campaign money keeps flowing to him, investor money vanishing. But you and he, you are doing fine. Nice homes, nice lifestyle, nice everything. Just a simple question. Did you know your husband was being sued by investors for fraud? Tim's business dealings were completely separate from. Did you know? Each word sharp and precise. No escape. I may have been aware there were some difficulties. Some difficulties. Vance's laugh was cold and harsh, asking, "Is that what we are calling fraud now? When investors lose their retirement savings? When families lose their kids' college funds? When life savings disappear into empty bank accounts? Those are difficulties?" Omar looked down. Could not maintain eye contact. Defeat written in her posture. These people lost everything to your husband, while your campaign made him a millionaire, paid him $78 million for consulting, for travel, for services rendered. He didn't need their money to survive. Your campaign was funding his lifestyle. Yet he took their money anyway because he could. Because nobody was watching. Because his wife, you, certainly weren't stopping him. The room was silent, absolutely silent, processing what this meant, understanding the scope of it. Here is what I think happened. Vance's voice was quieter now, steady, devastating in its calmness. I think your husband realized he could take money from anyone. Investors, sure. Campaign donors? Why not? Nobody was asking questions. Nobody was checking. You certainly weren't stopping him. Maybe you didn't ask. Maybe you didn't want to know. But you knew something. Had to know something. You are married to the man. Sharing a life. Sharing accounts. And you are telling me you had no idea he was being sued? No idea families were losing their savings? No idea his business accounts were empty? He leaned forward, stating, "I don't believe you, and neither does anyone else in this room." Refugee to riches. The phrase, now carrying weight. History. Meaning. You know this phrase by now. And your husband, consultant to con artist. Similar trajectory. Same story. Different details. Omar's breathing was heavy now. Audible gasps. She reached for water with a shaking hand. Didn't drink. Just held the glass, needing something to hold on to. Investor groups mobilizing within hours, filing new motions to add Ilhan Omar as a defendant, claimed she benefited from proceeds of fraud. Her name on new lawsuits, her lawyers scrambling with emergency motions, motions to dismiss, motions to separate, motions to avoid depositions. The legal walls closing in. Progressive media outlets going silent. Usually her defenders. Usually her allies. Not this time. Can't defend defrauding working families. Can't spin investors losing life savings. Just silence. Deafening silence. The Squad. Not tweeting. AOC silent. Rashida Tlaib silent. Ayanna Pressley silent. Not one word of support. Not one defense. Abandoned. Isolated. Alone. Think Progress removing articles defending her. Daily Cosmods deleting threads. Even her progressive base wavering. Reddit threads saying, "This looks really bad. Can't defend this. She is done." Upvotes in the thousands. Her coalition cracking. Her next scheduled campaign event saw 20 people show up. Used to be hundreds. The 20 who came, half were protesters with signs asking, "Where is our money?" and "Investigate Omar." Fraud squad indeed. She canceled, didn't even try, just canceled and left through the back. Working families watching, small business owners watching, Investors watching, realizing she is not one of us, never was, used our language, stole our causes, enriched herself and her family while we suffered. That is three, Vance's voice cutting through the chaos. $1 million campaign payments while husband defrauds investors. Money flowing in, money vanishing, families destroyed. But that is just money. Round 4 is about something else. Something that hurt people differently. A different kind of betrayal. Remember September 11th? She barely does. Let's talk about some people did something. We will be right back. Vance's tone shifted. Harder. Personal. Raw in a way it hadn't been before. I was 17 when the towers fell. His voice quieter, controlled. But you could hear the emotion underneath. Senior in high school in Ohio, small town, safe place, watching it on TV in social studies class, watched people jump, watched the towers collapse, watched America change forever. The room silent, different silence, respectful, heavy. Year later, I joined the Marines, deployed to Iraq, because of 9/11, because 19 terrorists murdered 2,977 Americans. He let each word land, murdered them, burned them, crushed them, made them jump from burning buildings, because burning to death was worse than falling. Omar was pale, very pale, knowing where this was going. 19 terrorists, not some people. 19 Islamic terrorists, members of Al-Qaeda. Names known, faces documented, stories told. Not did something, but murdered, planned, executed the worst terrorist attack in American history. 2,977 innocent people gone, families destroyed, nations scarred. He pulled out a transcript, noting that she, Congresswoman, speaking at a CARE fundraiser, described it as, he read from the page. Some people did something. 5 words. 5 words that show either incredible ignorance or incredible disrespect. Let me make sure I understand this. September 11th, 2001, terrorists hijack 4 planes, crash 2 into the World Trade Center, crash 1 into the Pentagon, passengers on the 4th fight back, plane crashes in Pennsylvania, everybody dies. 2,977 people, firefighters running into burning buildings, office workers making impossible choices, passengers calling families to say goodbye, first responders dying in the collapse, America watching in horror. He looked up, direct eye contact. And your description of this is, some people did something. Omar tried to interject. If you look at the full context, I read your full speech. Watch the video. 20 minutes. I have it right here. He tapped the transcript. You weren't taken out of context. You trivialized the worst terrorist attack in American history. And I want to know why. Here is the full quote. CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. Let's break this down. Some people, not terrorists, not Al-Qaeda, not 19 murderers. Some people, like describing Pearl Harbor as some folks showed up uninvited, like describing the Holocaust as some things happened, it's minimization, it's dismissal, it's disrespect. Did something, not murdered, not attacked, not terrorized, did something, like they helped with a charity drive, like they organized a fundraiser. 2,977 people murdered is something. And then the kicker. All of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. That is the focus, not the dead, not the families, not the heroes, but civil liberties. Muslims as the primary victims of 9/11. Vance's voice was rising, not shouting, just intensity building. Let me be clear about this. Muslim Americans did face increased scrutiny after 9/11. That happened, some of it unjustified, some of it racist. That is worth discussing. But Congresswoman, that is not what you did. You didn't discuss both the attack and the response. You minimized the attack to center the response. You made Muslims the primary victims of a day when 2,000 977 people were murdered. He pulled out another document. Nicholas Harros, Jr., son of Francis Harros, who died in the World Trade Center, September 11th. He stood at Ground Zero on the anniversary, wore a shirt with your words printed on it. Some people did something, reading from his testimony. Today I am here to respond to you exactly who did what, to whom. Madam, we know who and what was done. 19 Islamic terrorists, members of Al-Qaeda, killed over 3,000 people and caused billions of dollars in damage. Is that clear? The room was silent. Absolutely silent. You could hear Omar's breathing quick, shallow, and your response to this grieving son, to families of the murdered. You made it about Islamophobia, made yourself the victim again. A pattern, always the victim, never the one who did wrong. But I thought you cared about victims, about the oppressed, about the vulnerable, because the families of 9 over 11 victims, they are all those things. They were vulnerable on September 11th, they are still hurting now, still grieving, still missing mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, children, and you gave them. Some people did something. Just a simple question. Can you name the 19 terrorists who carried out the attacks? Long pause, very long, Omar's mouth opening, closing, opening again. I don't know all of them off the top of my... Can you name any of them? One? Just name one terrorist. Another pause. Longer. Devastating. I'm sure I could look it up. You can't name one. Not one. Vance's voice carrying disbelief. Real disbelief. But you remember to center Muslim victimhood. You remember CARE's founding. You remember civil liberties. But you can't name one terrorist. Can't name one victim either, I'd bet. Can you name one victim of 9? Over 11? Without looking it up? Silence. Total silence. She had nothing. No answer. No excuse. No deflection that would work. You came to America as a refugee. Vance's voice softer now. Almost gentle, which made it worse. Fleeing violence. Fleeing terror. Somalia's civil war? You know what it means to lose everything. To violence? To fear for your life? To see death? To experience trauma? He paused. Let that sink in. And then, you trivialized the worst terrorist attack on the country that took you in. The country that gave you safety, that gave you shelter, that gave you opportunity, that educated you, that made you a congresswoman. 2,977 people didn't get that opportunity. They got death. Their families got grief. First responders got cancer from the toxic dust. And you gave them. Some people did something. Omar's head was down, body hunched, tears visible on her face. But sympathy in the room? None. Absolutely none. You know what the cruelest part is? Vance gathering his papers. You think you are the victim here. You think being criticized for minimizing mass murder makes you oppressed? You think being held accountable for disrespecting 9 over 11 families makes you persecuted? That is the problem. That has always been the problem. You can't see past your own victimhood long enough to recognize actual victims. 9 over 11 families groups, issuing statements within the hour. Joint statements signed by dozens of family organizations. Representative Omar must resign. First responders unions piling on. Unacceptable disrespect. Never forget means never forgive. Veterans groups joining in. American Legion, VFW, Marine Corps League. How dare she? Even Democrats backing away. House leadership issuing a statement. Carefully neutral. We respect all victims of terrorism and recognize the ongoing pain of 9 over 11 families. Translation, she crossed a line. She is on her own. Her approval numbers plummeting, even in her district, even in Minneapolis, even among Muslims. Local imam issuing statement. She doesn't speak for our community. We respect 9 over 11 victims and their families. The isolation complete. Gold Star families weighing in. If she doesn't respect 9 over 11 victims, does she respect military families? Does she respect our sacrifice? Questions spreading doubt, spreading, trust, evaporating. That video of Nicholas Harrows Jr. at Ground Zero going viral. 10 million views, 20 million. His speech, her words on his shirt, the contrast devastating. Comments section brutal. She should resign. How dare she? Never voting Democrat again. The backlash. Building, that is for. Vance's voice cutting through. Some people did something. 2,977 Americans murdered. And she couldn't name one terrorist. Couldn't name one victim, but she can name her own victimhood in detail. Can recite every slight she has ever felt, every criticism, every question. But the actual victims of actual terrorism? Some people who did something? He paused. Final pause before the final round. Round 5 is about money again. Because refugee to millionaire, that is quite a journey on a public servant salary while preaching socialism. Let's trace that journey. Let's do the math. Let's see if it adds up. Spoiler alert. It doesn't. Final round coming up. Let's talk about socialism. Vance settled back. Almost conversational again. The calm before the final storm. You love talking about it? Wealth inequality? The 1%? Tax the rich? Make them pay their fair share? Medicare for all? Free college? Green New Deal? The whole progressive playbook. Omar straightened slightly. This was her territory. Her message. Her brand. And you are passionate about it? I'll give you that. Very passionate. Very articulate. Very convincing. When you talk about other people's money, Vance's pause was deliberate. Other people's money. That is the key phrase there. He pulled out financial documents. But here is what is interesting, what fascinates me, what doesn't add up no matter how many times I check the math. Let me make sure I understand your story. You arrived in America as a refugee. You have told this story many times. Beautiful story. Moving story. Fled Somalia. Refugee camp in Kenya. Arrived in America with nothing. Literally, nothing. I believe you. That is a hard journey. Tremendous hardship. Real poverty. Respect to you for surviving that. He spread the documents. So let's do the math. Public service, career, Minnesota State Legislature, $41,000 a year, then Congress, $174,000 a year. Good money, not poverty, but also not become a millionaire money. Omar's hands were back on the table, gripping the edge. She knew where this was going. You have been in public service total about 8 years. State legislature, Congress. Let's be generous with the numbers. Let's say you made total before taxes about $1.5 million. Sounds like a lot before taxes. After taxes, after living in D.C., one of the most expensive cities in America, after maintaining a residence in your district, after travel, after everything, he did the calculation out loud. Maybe you cleared $1 million if you are incredibly frugal, if you lived like a monk, which you didn't. But let's say you did. Let's say you saved half of it. Very generous assumption, that is $500,000. Looking up, direct eye contact. So, explain to me how you are worth several $1 million? Multiple millions? Properties, assets, lifestyle, nice homes, nice cars, nice everything. Public records, financial disclosures. They paint a picture. Refugee to multimillionaire in 8 years of public service, while preaching socialism, while attacking the wealthy, while demanding redistribution. Just a simple question. But first, context. Your progressive friends have the same story. Bernie Sanders, socialist for decades, 3 houses, multimillionaire. I wrote a book. He says, "Okay, Bernie, capitalism worked for you." Elizabeth Warren, champion of the middle class, net worth in the millions. AOC showed up to Congress complaining about student loans, now living in luxury D.C. apartment. Met Gala dress that costs more than most Americans make, in a month marked "Tax the Rich," while partying with billionaires. That is not activism. That is performance art. Back to Omar. And you fit right in. The champagne socialist. The pattern. Preach equality, practice luxury, attack the rich. become the rich. It is the progressive way. Here is what is interesting about this hypocrisy. You preach socialism, government control of resources, redistribution of wealth, tax the wealthy into oblivion, no billionaires should exist. That is your message. And your base. They love it. Working families in Minneapolis, struggling college students, people working 2 jobs to make rent. They hear you and think, finally, someone who gets it, someone who understands our struggle. He leaned forward. But let me make sure I understand this. You fled poverty, experienced real hardship, got to America, got into politics, started telling struggling Americans that rich people are the problem, that wealth inequality is destroying the country, that nobody should be a millionaire. Pause. Long pause. And while giving those speeches, you became a millionaire multiple times over. Omar's breathing was rapid now, face flushed. No good answer available, no deflection that would work. But I thought you cared about the little guy, about wealth inequality, the hook landing one final time, because Congresswoman, you are the wealth inequality. You are the 1% in your own district now. The family in Minneapolis who donated $25 to your campaign, they are still in the same house, same job, same struggle. You are in a different tax bracket, different world, different life. Picture them. Real people. The college kid who phone banked for your campaign, knocked on doors, made calls, believed in your message, still drowning in student debt, can't afford rent, working 3 part-time jobs. Meanwhile, your family is doing fine. Real fine. The math doesn't work. Public service salary plus speaking fees plus book deals equals comfortable life. Not multi-million-dollar wealth, not mysterious asset accumulation, not rapid climb. Something else generated that wealth, and you won't explain what. Your financial disclosures are vague, income sources unclear, property acquisition timeline suspicious, the whole picture muddy. Just a simple question. Final question. What is your current net worth? I don't have an exact figure. Ballpark? Million? 2 million? 5? My financial disclosures show. Yes or no? Are you a millionaire? Longest pause of the entire hearing. 15 seconds. 20, 25. The room holding its breath. Everyone knowing the answer, waiting for her to admit it. Finally, quietly, barely audible. Yes, yes. She's a millionaire. The socialist is a millionaire. The refugee who arrived with nothing is now in the 1%. The woman who tells working families to embrace economic equality has economically separated herself from them. Funny how that works. He gathered his papers final time. And you got there working for the government, representing working families, preaching socialism. You got there taking campaign donations from fraud perpetrators, paying your husband millions while his investors lost everything, while families struggled, while kids went hungry. You got there by betraying everything you claim to believe in. Refugee to riches, that is the whole story. That is the arc. You came with nothing. Fair enough. America gave you opportunity. Fantastic. You went into public service. Noble. And somehow, you figured out how to get very wealthy while telling everyone else they shouldn't be allowed to. His voice rising, not shouting, just passion, real passion. That is not socialism, that is a scam. That is telling working families to give up their dreams while you chase yours. That is telling college kids they can't succeed in capitalism, while you prove they can. Just not them. Just you. Just your family. Just your friends. Just the connected insiders. Omar's head down, shoulders shaking, crying openly now. But the room unmoved. Hard faces, cold eyes. Justice, not sympathy. The champagne socialist, that is what they call people like you, preach equality, practice luxury, attack the rich, become the rich. It is the oldest con in politics, and you are running it on the people who believed in you most. He stood. Working families in Minneapolis donated their hard-earned money to your campaigns, $25, $50, $100, money they needed, money they sacrificed because they believed you would fight for them, fight for justice, fight for equality. Walking toward the door, turning back. Final statement. Instead, you fought for you, your husband, your lifestyle, your wealth, their money, your pocket, their sacrifice, your benefit, their struggle, your comfort. That is the truth. That is the record. That is who you are. Democratic Socialists of America, moving fast. Emergency meeting, vote unanimous. We are removing our endorsement of Representative Omar. Her actions are inconsistent with our values and our mission. Translation. She is a fraud, and everyone knows it. Her district offices flooded. Angry constituents, not Republicans, her own voters. Where is our justice? Where is our redistribution? Where is our equality? Signs outside protests. Daily. Investigate Omar. Millionaire socialist is an oxymoron. The base abandoning ship. Republican ads writing themselves. Her face. Bernie's face. AOC's face. Meet the millionaire socialists who want your money. They got rich. You stayed poor. They want more. Running in every district. Devastatingly effective. Polling catastrophic. Her favorables cratering. Even in deep blue Minneapolis. Even among progressives. Even among Democratic primary voters. Because socialists can forgive many things. Not hypocrisy. Not getting rich while preaching poverty. Not betraying the core message while profiting from it. Working families across America. Watching, learning, understanding. It was always about her. Never about them. The politician in expensive clothes telling them to sacrifice while sacrificing nothing, taking everything, giving nothing back. That is 5. That is everything. Vance at the door looking back one final time. Fraud connections, campaign finance violations, husband's enrichment, investor fraud, 9/11 minimization, millionaire socialist, 5 rounds, 5 scandals, 1 pattern, 1 conclusion. He paused. Let's talk about what it means. So here we are. 5 scandals, 5 rounds, 1 inescapable pattern. Ilhan Omar is not an aberration. She is not one bad apple. She is not even particularly unique. She is the perfectly ordinary product of a corrupt system that rewards narcissism and punishes honesty. Let's review what we have learned. The fraud connection? $1 billion stolen from programs meant to feed hungry children during a pandemic? Her district? Her fundraising venue? Her donors? Her campaign enforcer? All connected to the largest pandemic fraud in American history. Her response: I didn't know. Right. You didn't know your own campaign worker was stealing from starving kids? Didn't know your fundraising hub was fraud headquarters? Didn't wonder where all this money was suddenly coming from? Sure. The family enrichment scheme, $2.78 million to her husband's consulting firm while dating him, while marrying him. After the relationship started, payments skyrocketed. Minnesota Campaign Finance Board finding: violated state law, ordered to pay back money, fined for improper use of campaign funds. Her excuse? The FEC cleared me. No, the FEC was gridlocked. That is not exoneration. That is inability to prosecute. Very different thing. The business failures and investor fraud. Her husband defrauding investors, multiple lawsuits, missing millions, court discovery showing empty bank accounts, families losing life savings while her campaign made him a millionaire. Her defense: I wasn't involved in his businesses. You just married him, paid him millions, shared accounts, shared a life, but knew nothing? Convenient. The 9/11 minimization. 2,977 Americans murdered, families devastated, nations scarred. Her description: some people did something, can't name one terrorist, can't name one victim, but can recite every perceived slight against Muslims in detail. When grieving families objected, she made herself the victim. Always the victim. Never the one who did wrong. The socialist scam. Refugee to multi-millionaire on a public servant's salary while preaching equality, while attacking the wealthy, while telling working families to embrace economic justice. The math doesn't work. The story doesn't add up. The wealth came from somewhere she won't say where, won't explain how, just keeps preaching socialism while practicing capitalism for herself, not for you. This isn't complicated. This is betrayal. Pure, simple, complete. She came to America with nothing. True story. America gave her opportunity, safety, education, a platform, all true. She went into politics claiming to fight for the powerless. That is what she said. But at every turn, every decision, every choice, she fought for herself. Campaign donors thought they were funding a movement. They funded her marriage. Investors in her husband's ventures thought they were building businesses. They funded fraud. Somali community members thought they had an advocate in Washington. They had someone whose fundraising hub was also fraud central. 9. Over 11 families thought every congressperson respected their pain. Wrong. Working families thought she would fight inequality. She became the inequality. But here is the thing about Omar. The revealing thing. The damning thing. She is not sorry. Watch her responses. Study her pattern. Never real accountability. Always deflection. Always victimhood. Always someone else's fault. Islamophobia, racism, misunderstanding, out of context. Taken the wrong way. Unfair targeting, media bias, Republican attacks, the list goes on, every excuse except the truth. Never I was wrong, never I should have known, never I'll make it right, never actual accountability. Because people like Omar don't make things right. They make excuses. They make accusations. They make you the bad guy for asking questions. That is the pattern. That is who she is. And that is what makes her so dangerous. Not the individual scandals. Americans can forgive mistakes, can forgive errors in judgment, can forgive human weakness. What they can't forgive, won't forgive, shouldn't forgive is complete inability to accept responsibility, total commitment to self-serving narratives, absolute conviction that she is always the victim, never the villain. But Omar isn't the disease. She is a symptom. Let's talk about the Democratic Party. Because here is the thing. She is not alone. She is not even unusual. She is typical. She is exactly what modern Democrats produce. She is what the system creates. She is the inevitable result of one-party, progressive control. The squad, her little club. 4 women, all progressive, all vocal, all woke, all somehow getting very comfortable very fast. AOC shows up to Congress, bartender with student loans, relatable, real, within months, luxury DC apartment, designer clothes, Met Gala attendance, dress marked tax the rich, while partying with billionaires and celebrities. That is not activism, that is cosplay. Expensive cosplay. Bernie Sanders, the socialist crusader, decades fighting capitalism, fighting the wealthy, fighting inequality, 3 houses, multi-millionaire. I wrote a book and it sold well. Okay, Bernie? So, capitalism works? So, free market success is good? No, no. That is different, right? Different when it is you? Different when you are the one getting rich? Same system you attack, created your wealth. But that is different. Elizabeth Warren, champion of the middle class, fighter for working families, voice of the struggling, net worth in the millions, living in Cambridge Mansion, teaching one class for $400,000. But I'm fighting for you from your mansion, with your wealth, while telling others they have too much. This is the pattern. This is what Democrats do. Run on helping the poor, end up joining the rich, but they never stop lecturing you about your privilege, never stop demanding you sacrifice, never stop telling you you've got too much, while they accumulate, while they enrich, while they elevate themselves above the people they claim to represent. Omar fits perfectly. She is not an outlier. She is the prototype. Preach equality, practice luxury, attack the wealthy, become wealthy, blame everyone else for the gap. It is the Democratic playbook. It is the progressive pattern. It is how the system works. And here is why it keeps working. Voters keep believing them. Working families keep donating. College kids keep volunteering. Small donors keep contributing. Because the messaging is beautiful. The rhetoric is moving. The promises are attractive. We are fighting for you. We understand your struggle. We will make the rich pay. We will create equality. We will fix the system. And people want to believe it. Need to believe it. Desperate to believe someone in power actually cares about them. But look at the results, not the speeches. The results, not the promises. The outcomes, not the rhetoric. The reality. Who gets rich in democratic politics? The politicians, the consultants, the staff, the family members, the spouses, the children, the connected insiders, the inner circle. They all do fine, really fine. Millionaires, multimillionaires, some even billionaires, all while preaching equality. Who stays poor? The voters, the donors, the believers, the communities they claim to represent. Minneapolis. More poverty now than when Omar was elected. More crime, more struggling families, more businesses failing, more people hurting. But Omar doing great. Her husband millionaire, her political network well-connected and well-funded, her district still waiting for that hope and change. This is what one-party control looks like. Minnesota, deep blue Democratic control for decades. Result: poverty, crime, decline. California, bluest of blue Democratic supermajority. Result: homeless crisis, crime surge, middle class fleeing. New York, same story. Illinois, same pattern. All Democratic strongholds, all struggling with poverty, crime, homelessness, decline. All voting for the same politicians who promised to fix it, all somehow surprised when it gets worse. Omar is not an accident of this system. She is not a bug. She is a feature. She is inevitable. When you build a political culture that rewards grievance, you get professional grievance mongers. When you create a system that punishes accountability, you get politicians who refuse accountability. When you let politicians enrich themselves while claiming to fight inequality, you normalize the hypocrisy. You make it standard. You make it acceptable. The Democratic Party doesn't have an Omar problem. Omar is their perfection. She is exactly what they wanted. Identity politics plus progressive rhetoric plus zero accountability equals Omar. Victimhood narrative plus wealth accumulation plus moral lecturing equals the modern Democrat. She is not the exception. She is the rule, and the party protects her. Always has. Always will. She should have been investigated in round one, when her fundraising hub turned out to be fraud headquarters, when her campaign worker was indicted, when the connections became obvious. Didn't happen. Democratic Party leadership looked the other way, protected her. She should have been censured in round two, when state officials found she violated campaign finance law, when the board ordered her to pay money back, when they fined her for improper use of donor funds. Didn't happen. House leadership ignored it, minimized it, moved on. She should have been primaried in round three, when her husband's fraud victims came forward, when the lawsuits revealed missing millions, when families told their stories of loss. Didn't happen. Party cleared the field for her, protected the incumbent, ensured her re-election. She should have resigned in round four, when she trivialized 9/11, when she disrespected grieving families, when she couldn't name a single victim or terrorist. Didn't happen. Democrats defended her, called criticism Islamophobic, made her the victim. She should have been investigated in round five, when her unexplained wealth raised obvious questions, when the math didn't add up, when refugee to millionaire in 8 years demanded explanation. Didn't happen. Media called it a distraction. Party said it was private. Shut down the questions. See the pattern? The system works for her, for them, not for you, not for the victims, not for the donors, not for the voters, not for America, for the politicians, for the insiders, for the protected class. That is what we are fighting. Not just corruption, systematic protection of corruption, the machine that makes Omar's possible, that makes them permanent, that makes accountability impossible, the media that covers for them, the party that shields them, the donors that fund them knowing they are corrupt. the voters that enable them, by refusing to see the truth. Omar is just one swamp creature. The swamp is real, and it is deep, and it protects its own, and it will fight like hell to survive, because it is not about ideology, it is not about helping people, it has never been about helping people, it is about power, money, control, access, influence, the game. And Omar, she learned to play the game, learned to work the system, learned to take from the poor while claiming to champion them. This is what draining the swamp means. Not just removing corrupt politicians, removing the system that creates them, dismantling the media apparatus that defends them, breaking the party structure that protects them, exposing the donor network that funds them, educating the voters that enable them. Truth over power, evidence over narrative, justice over politics, accountability over protection, results over rhetoric, actions over words. That is how you beat them. That is how you win. That is how you save the country from the Omars of the world. Want change? Demand accountability from everyone. Every time. No excuses, no deflections, no context, no misunderstandings, no victimhood narratives, no identity politics shields, just facts, just evidence, just truth. And when politicians refuse accountability, vote them out. Primary them, replace them, don't reward betrayal with re-election. The champagne socialists count on your ignorance, your apathy, your willingness to believe the rhetoric over examining the results. They count on you being too busy to check their records, too trusting to question their wealth, too sympathetic to their victim narratives, to see them victimizing others. Don't give them that. Be informed. Be skeptical. Be demanding. Be unforgiving of corruption, whether it is your party or theirs, whether it is your politician or their politician. Corruption is corruption. Fraud is fraud. Hypocrisy is hypocrisy. Doesn't matter what letter is next to their name, doesn't matter what identity they claim, doesn't matter how compelling their victim story sounds. Evidence, facts, records, results, that is what matters. That is what we just presented. 5 rounds, 5 scandals, 1 pattern, 1 conclusion. Ilhan Omar betrayed everyone who believed in her, and the Democratic Party helped her do it. Protected her while she did it. Ensured she could keep doing it. That is the real scandal. Not just her corruption. The system that enables it, that rewards it, that protects it, that makes it inevitable. Now you know. Now you have seen the evidence. Now you understand the pattern. What you do with that knowledge, that is up to you. If this gave you even a fraction of the clarity it should, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, email, text message. Your uncle who still votes Democrat because his grandfather did. Your friend who thinks AOC is genuine. Your coworker who believes Bernie cares about the working class. Everyone needs to see this. Everyone needs to understand the pattern. Drop a comment. What other Democrats need the Omar treatment? Because trust me, there is a long list. Long. Elizabeth Warren claiming Cherokee heritage to get ahead. Adam Schiff lying about classified evidence for years. Eric Swalwell, compromised by Chinese intelligence. Maxine Waters, living in a mansion outside her district, while her constituents suffer. The whole parade of hypocrites who preach sacrifice while practicing luxury. And if you are in Minnesota's 5th district, you know what to do next election. Refugee to riches only works if voters let it. Don't let it. Primary her. Replace her. Send someone who will actually fight for you instead of themselves. Someone who will live by the values they preach. Someone who won't get mysteriously wealthy on a public salary while telling you to embrace poverty. This is just the beginning. We are just getting started. There are dozens more like her. Hundreds. All playing the same game. All running the same scam. All counting on you, not paying attention. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. So you don't miss when we expose the next fraud, the next hypocrite, the next champagne socialist pretending to care while robbing you blind. The swamp is deep. The corruption is real. The betrayal is systematic. But the truth is a weapon, and we are armed.